let's set the scene. Picture two guys standing out in the middle of a massive torrential rainstorm. Now, the first guy, he's holding this huge bucket, but there's a serious catch. The bottom is just riddled with 100 tiny holes. The rain is pouring in, which is like having a massive income, right? But it's pouring out just as fast. By the end of the storm, he's totally exhausted, incredibly stressed out, and completely broke. Now, look at the second guy. He's just holding a small cup. It doesn't hold much at all, but it is solid steel, not a single hole. For him, the rain is really just a drizzle, kind of like a low salary, but he catches every single drop. Once that cup is full, he pours it into a barrel, then another one. And when the storm finally passes, the guy with the huge bucket is begging for water, but the guy with the little steel cup, he's wealthy. The hard truth here is that making more money if you have bad habits is literally just pouring water into a leaking bucket. You don't actually get any richer, you just speed up the flow of the waste. Welcome to our explainer on the Japanese art of quiet wealth. Today, we're stepping into a completely different world, a world of quiet, monk-like discipline, to uncover a secret that's literally over a century old. It's a profoundly simple system that lets you finally patch those holes in your bucket, like completely mastering what you already have. But before we get into all of that, we really need to ask ourselves a pretty difficult question. Why are we so incredibly bad with money? Seriously, if you're constantly feeling that gut-wrenching anxiety of living paycheck to paycheck, I need you to hear something right now. It's not entirely your fault. You are actually caught in a modern, highly engineered trap. You're trapped in something we call frictionless spending. We basically live inside this anxious, totally invisible money machine. Think about it. You tap your card. You click Buy Now on your phone. You double tap the side button for Apple Pay. These corporations have spent literal billions of dollars to intentionally remove the psychological pain of paying. A simple tap just completely numbs your brain. You don't physically feel the money leaving your hand, so you don't feel the loss. All of that damage just hides quietly in the background until the end of the month, when you're suddenly forced to do a financial autopsy on your bank statement. And by then, well, it's way too late. The patient's already dead. So how do we actually fight back against this machine? We slow down. We return to a grounded physical reality. Enter Kakeibo. This was invented way back in 1904 by Japan's very first female journalist, Hani Motoko. And it's a household financial ledger. Listen, it's not some flashy new app, and it's definitely not an automated Excel sheet. It's just a physical book and a pen. Kakeibo is all about the deliberate act of forcing friction back into your life. When you have to physically write down latte, $6.50 on a piece of paper, your brain processes that transaction completely differently. You actually stop and think, wait, is this latte really worth the effort of writing it down? Is it literally worth the ink? Suddenly, your invisible money becomes visible again. You start to realize you aren't just spending digits on a screen, you're spending your actual life energy. And Kakeibo completely flips modern budgeting on its head. Most of us, we spend first and then we try to save whatever happens to be left over, which, let's be honest, is almost always zero. The Kakeibo method flips the whole equation. It's income minus savings equals spending. You pay yourself first. So say you make $3,000 and you want to save $500. You remove that $500 immediately, right off the top. Now you absolutely have to survive on the remaining $2,500. It creates this artificial scarcity. And when you have less available to you, you're forced to prioritize actual survival over those endless little nice-to-haves. To actually pull this off, every single expense is ruthlessly sorted into one of 4 buckets. First step, survival needs. This is your rent, food, medicine. The non-negotiables. Second, we have optional wants, things like dining out, shopping, grabbing drinks. Third is culture, books, museums, movies. And Kakeibo actually encourages this one. Mental enrichment is seen as a really vital investment. And the fourth bucket is extra, unexpected repairs or maybe a birthday gift. But I want you to pay very close attention to that second bucket, the optional wants. That right there, that's the leak. That is the exact battleground where your financial freedom is either won or lost. And you can forget about that depressing end-of-the-month autopsy we talked about earlier. Kakeibo relies on this quiet, daily evening ritual instead, the 3-minute daily checkup. Every single night, you sit down for just 3 minutes and you confront your receipts. You write them into your buckets while the memory is still painfully fresh. If you dropped $50 at the bar last night, you have to write it down today. You feel the immediate sting of that choice right there and then. And it's exactly that sting that stops you from making the exact same impulsive mistake tonight. This daily checkup then translates into real-world action through the envelope method. So, at the start of the month, you withdraw the exact amount of cash you budgeted for your optional spending, and you put it into a physical envelope. When you go out, you only take cash from that envelope. Why? Because you absolutely cannot cheat the brutal physics of an empty envelope. When the cash is gone, the fun is over for the month. Period. No overdrafts, no swiping a credit card. Now, if you really hate using cash, you can use a fixed amount card like Monzo or Revolut, but the rule itself remains absolute. It forces you to master impulse control by creating a hard, unyielding physical limit. Just seeing that stack of bills get thinner and thinner, it gives you this very real, visceral sense of your time and resources running out. But what about those really big impulses? We live in an era of instant gratification, and let me tell you, that absolutely destroys wealth. Kakeibo introduces some real psychological warfare against this with the 30-day cooling off period. Here's how it works. Day 1, you feel the urge to buy something you don't actually need. You don't buy it, you just write it down in your notebook. By day 15, you're deep in the waiting zone. And then, day 30, the decision. And here is the crazy part. 90% of the time, by day 30, that burning urge is completely gone. You realize you were just bored or sad or maybe even just hungry. This 30-day delay actively kills the dopamine loop of shopping. It forces you to confront the underlying anxiety you were actually trying to self-medicate with, a shiny new gadget. This entire mindset completely shifts how we view the things we own. There are these two Japanese concepts, monozukuri and multi-nai, which basically translate to having a deep respect for materials and a profound regret over waste. And look, this isn't just about being frugal. Finding genuine satisfaction in maintenance, like polishing a pair of old shoes, cleaning the junk files off an old phone, or repairing a torn shirt, it's honestly an act of cinematic rebellion. You are actively rebelling against a consumer economy that is entirely built on keeping you endlessly dissatisfied. You become the master of your material world, instead of just being a slave to the mall. Then, at the very end of the month, you perform what's called the Hansei review. This is where you become a scientist studying your own behavior. Step 1, you compare your actual spending to your budget. Step 2, you identify your emotional failure triggers. You have to ask yourself the really hard questions here, like why did you spend $200 on Uber Eats last week? Were you stressed out, depressed? And then step 3, you implement free alternatives. So once you figure out that your trigger is, say, work stress, next month you replace that $50 takeout order with a free walk in the park or a hot bath. You're creating this amazing loop of continuous mindful improvement. Okay, I really want you to hear this because this is the ultimate truth. Wealth is not a high salary. Look at man A. He makes $200,000 a year, but he spends $200,000. His actual wealth, it's zero. He's just running on a treadmill. If he loses his job, he's totally destitute in 30 days. Now look at man B. He makes only $50,000, but he only spends $30,000. He saves $20,000 a year. Man B is vastly richer. Why? Because wealth is the gap between your income and your spending. Every single dollar you save is not a restriction. It's a tiny little worker you've hired to go out into the world, invest, grow, and eventually buy you a day where you don't ever have to work again. Man B owns his time. Ultimately, Kakeibo acts as the ledger of life. Your life is strictly limited in both time and resources. So are you spending them on things that are just going to rust and rot? Or are you spending them on real experiences and peace of mind? This ledger, it acts as a brutally honest mirror. If you claim that your family is your absolute #1 priority, but your ledger clearly shows you spent $500 on golf and absolutely zero on family, well, the math proves you're lying to yourself. You have to align your spending with your soul. So I'm issuing a bit of a call to arms today. I challenge you to the 7-day Kakeibo challenge. For the next 7 days, here is what I want you to do. Step 1, do not just check your banking app. I want you to physically write down every single cent you spend on a notebook or, hey, even a napkin. Step 2, at the end of the week, I want you to circle all of your optional wants in bright red ink. And step 3, calculate the total shock of the damage. Expose exactly how much of your precious life energy you are currently setting on fire. Because awareness, that is the very first step to making a real change. Before we wrap up this explainer, I want you to confront your leaks head on. Tell us your daily guilty pleasure in the comments below. Come on, what's that one small thing that is just draining your wallet every single month? Is it that daily iced latte, endlessly buying things in app, taking an Uber when you could easily walk? Just confess it, own it, and then make the ultimate vow to finally pat your bucket. Say it with me. I master my money. It does not master me. As you look at your own leaking bucket today, you have to ask yourself, are you building your own wealth or are you just funding the frictionless machine? Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer, and we will see you